So an announcement today that surprised literally nobody because we all saw this coming from a mile away. YellowStar has returned to Fnatic to be their support once again after leaving them for the spring split to play for Team Solo Mid. This is giving back a third player to the roster that Fnatic had throughout 2015, where it had a very successful year, taking first place in the European LCS splits, both in spring and in summer, and having that top 4 finish at the 2015 League of Legends World Championship. So YellowStar's return means a few things for Fnatic, but there's still a couple of issues that the roster is suffering from. But YellowStar's return is something that will alleviate a few of the issues. So let's talk about his time on Team Solo Mid and kind of maybe theorycraft for a moment, like why he would return to Fnatic. Now, obviously, he went to Team Solo Mid. A bunch of other well-respected players did as well. You had like Svenskeren joining him. Hanser was picked up for the squad. Then you had Doublelift. That was a big signing for the team. And when you looked at all these pieces, you could theorycraft away that, hey, okay, this could be a roster that could win the LCS finals. This could be like the best team in North America, just in terms of like the talent that they had. Barry Bergson was the best position. Doublelift had like an all-star season prior to the spring 2016 split, so summer 2015 on CLG. YellowStar could be the captain, or rather the main shot caller for the team. He could use his strategic mind to manipulate the map and all those things and alleviate some of the shot calling stress that Bjergsen had, so then Bjergsen could just focus on smashing lane. But these pieces didn't fit together. Whether it was a machination of a failure of the supporting staff, a failure of the players to yield control from being vocal in their duties and wanting to have a say in what objectives and how the team played. Regardless of what happened there wasn't that control exuded by YellowStar. A lot of the talking was done by, I believe, Doublelift chatted a lot, and Bjergsen did. If you watch like that highlight video from IEM, YellowStar wasn't getting much of a word in edgewise. Now, the squad did get it together. During playoffs, they looked markedly better. However, they were playing against a Cloud9 who had a rush underperforming massively after the first game in the playoff series, and Cloud9 just became really disorganized and really disheveled. You had Immortals in the semifinal match, and Immortals wasn't even playing to the meta. They were still trying to do this carry top lane thing, rather than just adapting and having Huni play tanks and having Reignover pick up more carry junglers like Graves, which they would then do against Team Liquid. So Immortals just didn't adapt in time, or refused to adapt, whatever the case was. They didn't play, we'll say standard and properly, and even though they could have won the first game, Immortals that is, they made a few mistakes that allowed Team Solo Mid to come back in just by virtue of the compositions. And then Immortals kept sticking to this plan rather than just saying, okay, now we're going to just play standard. And it was fairly evident that they could do that, at least against Team Liquid. So TSM had a pretty easy run in the final, just circumstantially. And then they played its face against CLG, and they lost that final. It was 3-2. And you had like various performances from the players. We saw Svenskeren step up and take more of a carry-oriented role, like we expected him to, like all season long. Finally, YellowStar was not as bad. A lot of people threw criticisms at YellowStar for like feeding, doing various things. I think most of it was unjust. Like the whole team was a mess. Like it wasn't just YellowStar feeding that was the problem there. He was never really like this mechanical god playmaking support that we'd associate with something like I think Mata, like especially at MSI, or Gorilla on the Rocks Tigers in Korea, or even Aframu on CLG. YellowStar's strength is that he gives this understanding for a team of how to play the map. He alleviates shot calling pressure for duties. He says, listen to me guys, I'm gonna have the plan, stick to the plan, stick to the plan, stick to the plan. I don't know what that was. That's a main strength that he comes in here, and when you have this team that is instead letting others try and take up that role, they're letting people who may not be so, good at shot calling or have a good sense of how to play the map and game and things like that take over, you get the mess that Team Solo Mid had for most of that regular season. They looked like they didn't know how to operate in lane swaps, they didn't know how they, a lot of the time, they didn't know how to really like snowball their leads, they didn't really play to their strengths. It was pretty awful. And I don't think that changed. I don't think YellowStar's role within the team changed during playoffs. They were able to finally sort of learn how to play as a team, as it were. Thanks to some contributions from Mind Games Weldon, the famous/infamous sports psychologist that's going about in the League of Legends scene. He might do some other esports, I'm not sure. So with YellowStar returning to Fnatic, what does this mean for Fnatic, aside from, hey, we're getting our old shot caller back, and Febvin and Reckless, I've already played with him before, there is that synergy there. So rather than having to develop Cly, who has been, ranged from decent to pretty mediocre, now you have YellowStar coming back in, and again, YellowStar's thing isn't about making the plays, and you have enough playmakers on Fnatic to really worry about that. Spirit is an aggressive jungler when he is allowed to be, and he can set up ganks for that squad. Febvin, we've recognized him as one of the really good mids in Europe for like all of last year, probably the best mid in the region. He's just always been pretty much a clutch player. Him having to kind of help out with Reckless to dictate some of the shot calling this season has been detrimental to the squad, and my memory's a bit fuzzy here. It's early in the morning, so I apologize. From what I understand, Reckless was the captain of Fnatic this past season, and so I think a lot of the shot calling duty fell on him. So, I'm not entirely sure about that and like what else like Febvin had to contribute within that. But those two were the two remaining players in the previous squad, so I imagine that they had a lot of the duties and pressure on them to really step up and manage the team, kind of lead the team, both in game and in like that outside of team synergy sense, as well as Dalior, of course, the coach contributing to that outside of the game. So with YellowStar coming back now, we have Reckless and Fnatic, Reckless and Fnatic. I'm mixing that up a lot. I guess Febvin is just synonymous with Fnatic. I mean, they both have like the similar symbols. Fnatic, Febvin. I'm getting messed up here. Febvin and Reckless can now focus more on just playing the game and having to just focus on laning, focus on mechanics, so that it frees them up mentally just to devote more into performing rather than trying to think, okay, now we need to do this, now I need to understand like these things. Instead, YellowStar can do all of that for them again. And that's probably what is going to happen with Fnatic, rather than what Team Salamid did, which is like, hey, we got like one of the best Western shot callers in the world, let's shut them the fuck up. Let's actually let YellowStar talk is what Fnatic is going to have happen, and so this is going to help some of their macro issues in terms of rotations and how they play the map, which is, I think, is going to be really important, because with the changes to Rift Herald, with the changes to Dragons, it's going to be really important to have someone who can navigate the map fluidly, as the objectives develop and as the game goes on. So when we look at now, there are still some problems on the Fnatic squad that aren't going to be solved by this. Gamsu, I feel like, is a bit of he's a bit inconsistent as a top laner. He can have like these like huge like come up plays, but they're not all the time. He's serviceable is what he is, and I think he has decent teleporting. Maybe with YellowStar managing the calls on that, Fnatic's teleports can improve a little bit. We'll have to see about that. Fnatic sometimes doesn't look like they know what to do with Spirit, so who knows about that, but perhaps YellowStar coming on in and being able to roam out of lane with Reckless is going to be able to enable Spirit to do some more of his aggressive things and get important vision down. YellowStar has always been fairly good when it comes to vision control. So so they're going to still have issues in the top side of the map. Okay, playing around the Korean jungler, playing around Gamsu. I believe he's a Korean top laner, actually. But what they are going to have back is a leader, an in-game leader that we know is good, and that's going to be able to take some of the pressure off of the other guys so they can just focus on playing the game and carry. Now, I don't think that YellowStar and Reckless are going to be like this really... We've seen them before. They're not this like super hyper-aggressive, we're going to smash lane, we're going to draw advantage lane. They're not that forgiven type lane, if you will. But what they are going to have is they're going to be pretty consistent. They're going to be really conservative. They're going to get their little leads in that lane. They can maybe open up some plays through there. I think bot lane's going to be really important with dragon changes. So they're going to be a pretty stable rock, and if they can exude the pressure that they need to, then that can open up YellowStar to roam, help out Spirit, help out Febvin, maybe even go all the way up top lane to help Gamsu. Depends on how they're able to play the map. So it's pretty obvious that we kind of like saw that, after, leaving Team Solo Mid and then seeing Clyde be put on the Challenger roster, that's like, now wait a minute, what's really going on here? And then, we can, of course, do the memes about, like, YellowStar being that like high school boyfriend or girlfriend that you had, you know, you've been great together for like 2 years, but then you graduate and you're going to college, and they're like, yeah, you know, I kind of just want to, I don't want to be tied down. I kind of want to get out and experiment. And then they come back and, you know, it's just like, baby, I'm sorry, man. This is like, you know, I went out there, but you're the only one for me. So please take me back. Sort of what YellowStar did, except he got to make a bit of bank while he was going for that. So, anyways, I'm excited for what seems to happen. Both of these squads, I say squads, both YellowStar and Fnatic made it to the final of their respective region, but they weren't able to win the final there. Or did they make it to the final? Who made it to the final? Was it G2? No, it was G2 versus Origin. Fnatic made it to the semifinal. There we go. Correct that one. Fnatic made it to the semifinal. YellowStar made it to the final. So the goal of this move then is for them to go farther, for YellowStar to win the final that he gets to, and for Fnatic to actually get to the final and win that one again with YellowStar come back onto the roster. That's my thoughts on the move. It's good to see YellowStar back on Fnatic, for Fnatic fans, I'm sure. I'll be interested to see how this helps the team develop in a macro sense, and then as we kind of see and compare and contrast how Fnatic played from this past season and this season in terms of just like how they moved around the map and stuff, we can kind of really get to see how YellowStar affects the team. So that'll be very cool.